Welcome to the Leadership Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Jono White. I'm the founder and principal consultant of Clarity. We are an Australian-based consultancy that works with leaders around the world, and our passion is to invest in people to become everything they're meant to be in order to fill the world with healthy organizations that people love to work for and customers line up to buy from. The goal of this podcast is to invest in you and your leadership. If you're just joining us for the first time, then feel free to check out consultclarity.org. That's our website, consultclarity.org. We have so many free resources on there, the most popular being our 7 Questions on Leadership series. We've had more than 1,500 leaders from around the world in all different sectors give their in-depth answers on leadership, what books they love, what they found most challenging, the most meaningful stories, how they structure their time through the day. That's free, so go and check it out. And we'd love to interview you about your leadership. I believe you have advice from your experience, your context, and your life so far that is important and can help other leaders. It's also a great way to give back. It's free to get involved, and you can do so by going to consultclarity.org/7-questions-interest, or just Google consultclarity.org 7 questions interest and fill out the form that pops up. We have a free resource for you on our website. It's called Leadership Survival Guide. It's a 57-page ebook. It has interviews with 10 world-class leaders, and you can go to consultclarity.org. It's right at the top, and get that today. We also have a daily email that we send out to over 15,000 leaders, and that email contains the highlights, our best content from our podcasts, our blog, my book, the books that we're loving that are out there about leadership. It's also the best way to get access to our masterclasses and workshops before anyone else. And there's also exclusive and limited special options just for subscribers. And you can subscribe by going to consultclarity.org/subscribe. Now, my gift to you is to work incredibly hard to provide the best leadership content I can to invest in you and your leadership. So if you're finding our content helpful, if you find this podcast helpful, then your gift to me could be this. If you do find it helpful, then write a review or rate our content and make sure you subscribe or follow. I can't emphasize enough how helpful that is. It really does help us to get the word out there so we can invest in more leaders to become everything they're meant to be. It also means a lot to me personally when people like you and people in our community share our content on social media. So if you do that, then please do look for me, Jono White, to tag me, and look to tag Clarity on whatever platform you're on. And our team, including me, I'm always looking to see when people have mentioned us so that I can engage with you. And also we look at sharing content. So if you write something about something we've done, there's also a good chance we'll share that with our followers. So if you could do that, that is a massive, massive help as we try to invest in as many leaders as we can around the world. Last of all, you can check out my book about how to deal with difficult people even if you hate conflict. It's called Step Up or Step Out. It's available on Amazon. You can just look up Step Up or Step Out Jono White, or you can go to store.consultclarity.org/book and check it out there. I have coached leader after leader after leader, and in more than 50% of the sessions, this topic comes up. How do I deal with this person? I'm finding it really difficult, and I just want to find a way that doesn't blow up to just to have a difficult conversation, to lead them better. How do I do that? There's a 3-step process that I outline in this book that I believe can help you. Okay, let's get into today's episode of the Leadership Conversations podcast. Enjoy. Welcome to the Leadership Conversations podcast. Today's guest is Lisa Askwith. And Lisa, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Before we press record, we were just chatting around investing in people and engagement, and I really love how you think about leadership. So I'm excited to have you on.
Thank you so much, John. A real pleasure to be here. I love being able to reach out and talk to so many different people who have that moment in time to listen to something that might actually help them, that they want to know a little bit more about. So I love talking about leadership and engaging people for success.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a lot of fun. So First of all, can you give our listeners a bit of an idea of a bit more about who you are, who Lisa is, and where you're based and what you do?
Absolutely. Yeah, because my career is a little bit confusing to some as well, because I've moved around a bit and I've moved countries too. So as you can hear from my accent, I'm Australian. Grew up, born and bred in Adelaide. And I do love Adelaide. Didn't want to move out in a big hurry. Kept being asked to go to places like Sydney or over to America, and they just didn't really appeal. So I stayed and worked for companies where head office was Sydney, but lived in Adelaide. And I just really had a great chance to move through everything from sales training, big pharmaceutical companies, into cross border trade, restructuring, and really ultimately through that process, learning a lot about people because you're dealing with so many different elements of big businesses that move in different ways. Different people have different thought patterns, different experiences. So my career moved through that sales management, sales training to regional management, which exposed me to lots of different things. And I put my hand up quite a lot to learn extra. So I would do the leadership training, I'd do the HR training, the extra things that some people didn't really have time for or didn't want to have time for. And I think that gave me a really broad perspective, which is what's brought me to where I am today, which is in the consulting space. I left the big global businesses and the nice corporate packages and went into consulting because I had so many of the clients I was working with saying to me, look, we can see all the money you're making for these big global businesses, all the changes that you're doing, all the good things that work. But we want you to come to our level, to the SMEs, and help us too. And obviously, when I'm employed as a corporate, I can't do that. So I took that big step and joined the consulting world, which has been absolutely fantastic. And the space that I've lived in for the last 12 years, which has taken me across to Singapore and working globally, where I get exposed to every type of industry you could possibly imagine, with a really diverse range of problems, whether they be cross-border, internal, people-based structure. And I get to learn so much, but also do so much. And I love really being at that point where I can fix those problems and help people succeed. And that's what makes my day at work.
Yeah, I love that. And for those who are listening, I'll make sure that I ask you a little bit later on, Lisa, about how people can get in contact, because as we chat, there may well be some leaders listening who go, oh, Lisa might be the person that I need to connect with. So I'll make sure we do that before we finish the podcast. What I'd love to do first, though, is just get a bit of a window into what led to Lisa becoming who you are today. So feel free to tell us as far back as you want into your childhood stories. What are some of the what are some of those moments that really shaped you becoming the leader you are today?
Yeah, I think there's probably a few of those along the journey as you get a bit older and you do things and you see things and you think through things. I think, but for me, from a very young age, I knew what I didn't want. And I guess I'd grown up in a situation where I'd seen that and I made that choice very early on that I'm not going to be like that. And so for me, it was always to push myself to do things and not make excuses. And I think that pushed me very quickly into leadership roles. And if I'm being realistic right now with myself and trying to take off the blinders and look back and be honest, I would say that probably pushed me to leadership roles too soon. Because whilst I might have had the mental agility and capability, I don't think looking back I really had the understanding, the social skills, the ability to be empathetic with my teams and help lead them that you really need to have true success. So I think what shaped me early on in my leadership time was jumping into that first leadership role and having worked with a leader who was very well accepted, very well seen, well thought after, and could pretty much say and do what they needed when they needed, and it all just seemed to work. And I think when you go into your first role, you don't realize how much effort it takes to get to that point in your leadership career. And so that first role for me was pretty rocky. I might have had the title and I could do the job really well. I could get the customers in, I could do all of that. I was in a sales based arena. But working with my teams was where I wasn't so great. And for me, that was a really big eye opener. And I think it's that step from being that individual contributor where you're driven and you do and you know you're good at it, to really stepping back and helping other people become like that, but in a way that supports their own needs. So for me, that was a big eye opener. And I think that set very early for me that question in my mind of what do I really need to do to be a great leader and be able to work with people? And it's not just the title, it's not just the authority. And this is going back 20 years ago now, believe it or not, where sometimes that's all you did need. But I think for me, I saw that bigger picture quite early on and have focused over the years on developing that side of my leadership character. And that's been a really big thing to keep me moving forward.
Yeah, that's wonderful to hear, and I think there'd be a lot of listeners leaning in who are individual contributors but want to lead, and that's why they're listening, or they've recently made the transition and they're going, "Oh my goodness, what is this?" I know that was me. I felt so naive a few months in when I realized I have no idea how to lead people. I just everything I assumed seems to have been wrong, and it's way harder than I thought. And you actually have to build teams and it's not just things people say. You learn the hard way. So I'm interested to know, do you remember any specific moments in that time in your career when you were making that first transition in that rocky first role? Were there any moments that really stand out as uh, aha moments where you saw someone else doing something great and you thought, that's what I need to be like, or where you self-reflected and went, you just, as we all do at times, you made a big mess and went, oh my goodness, I need to find out how to do this better.
Look, there's probably a bit of both that meet in the middle there. And I think one of the really big aha moments for me was a lady who was one of my team in the sales arena. And she was probably a little bit more delicate than some, to be honest, looking back. But she could sell and, she could do it. And I'd go out and field with her and we'd have a great day and would sell a lot and she would feel really good. But then she'd have a week where she just couldn't do it again. And I think for me early on, I missed that coaching opportunity. And looking back, and this is where I met another manager at the time who was brilliant at this. She was really, really good at bringing out those questions and helping coach someone to develop their own success. I was still falling back onto being that individual contributor. And when this lady was falling over during the sales call, I was automatically picking her up. And, at the end of the day, I was probably her and my own worst enemy at that point in time. I needed to take that step back and help coach her through those a lot more rather than saving her. And, whilst a lot of managers go, yeah, but you saved the bottom line, it didn't save the staff member because after a few months, she just couldn't cope. She kept falling over and she had to leave. She resigned herself. So for me, that was a really big aha moment. I missed my opportunity as a leader to be a great coach and help her through that because I was still too much stuck in that individual contributor mode.
Yeah, that's so profound, and I think anyone listening will be able to resonate with that, and that temptation, particularly when you are first in that role and you just want to be successful and you have someone in your team and they're struggling and you just think, well, helping them ultimately looks like jumping in and doing it for them.
Mm-hmm.
You're not even thinking about it necessarily that way, but that's what you do. What advice would you give to, let's start with those who are in that individual contributor type of time? They're in that role at the moment. They're only a couple of years out of that sort of role and they're questioning whether they can even be a leader. What advice would you give someone to transition from the individual contributor mindset to a leader mindset?
I think one of the biggest things that I've seen be successful for a lot of my clients, particularly the clients who have moved into this space where they're just starting to lead or they've been there a while and they just know that something's not right, is actually focus on being a coach. And it's a really funny one because a lot of people turn around and go, yeah, but I've got no idea about soccer or football or anything else. I'm not a coach. And it's like, yeah, but the skills a coach has are key to being a sensational leader because a great coach can challenge your assumptions in a way that never makes you feel bad about yourself, but it always highlights something that you can do to get better. They are brilliant at their questioning skills and they question in a way that doesn't micromanage, but it gently guides and directs. It uncovers gaps and it helps people succeed. So I always recommend people, if you're moving into that space, if you're a leader right now and you've got a team and you're just not feeling like you're communicating well with them, start developing your coaching skills, whether you go online, whether you look for a course, whether you find a mentor, whatever works for you personally. But once you start uncovering the right questions, and if you're an online fan, literally jump on and Google Grow. It's an old model of how to question properly. It's been around 30 years. But you know what? It works. And all the information is there. It can step you through 4 key ways to have a discovery conversation with your people that, yes, might take you an extra 10 minutes than it does to tell them what to do, but it gives you so much information. It strengthens your ability to ask the right questions and help guide your people in the right direction without missing opportunities. So develop those coaching muscles, those key questions, and you'll find that your leadership really starts to take off.
Yeah, so Grow is a great model for people to check out, and that's Goal
Yep.
Reality Options Will. Is that the one? Is by John
Hey,
Whitmore?
well done.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. So make sure people check out that model by John Whitmore, the Grow model. That's fantastic advice, Lisa. Um, Now, I'm interested to know. Oh, actually, sorry. I just wanted to share one thing I heard the other day, and I can't remember who told it to me. Otherwise, I would give. I definitely didn't come up with it, but it was this saying that a manager is someone who you walk out of the room with them and you think, wow, they're so smart, like they're so brilliant. A leader is a person where you walk out of the room and think, I'm so like I can really do this. I've got this. I've got the ability to do this. And I love that difference between if you want to just manage people, then you maintain that seeming like the expert, but a leader actually invests in their people in such a way that they're built up and they actually walk out of a meeting with you, a coaching session, feeling empowered and actually feeling like, yeah, I can do this. And I love that differentiation.
Yeah. It's a really, really good one. And look, I see it play out so often because at the end of the day, the people out there in our workforce now, you know what, they've changed from 25, 30 years ago. Their needs are also really different. So whereas the old school command and control managers had success back some time ago, people aren't there anymore for a job for life. They don't want to be told what to do to get to the next level. They actually want to be valued and they want to be able to give value back to the business as well, which is a really new concept in terms of how our employees relate back into a business. And this is our millennial mindset. And we know now that by 2025, 75% of our workforce are going to be these people with these belief patterns. So we really have to move to that leadership space. So we're not telling someone anymore, we're supporting them to achieve. We're recognizing their values and their needs. And particularly, we're focusing in on their learning and development needs. They want to go to the next level. Because our new generation of workers, they know that their jobs aren't there for life. They know a career might be 2 years or 5 years, and that during that time, they're going to need to upskill because technology is changing so rapidly. We can't sit complacently anymore. So we constantly see now with all the big global surveys that the number one need for the new workforce isn't actually money or job title anymore. That's dropped down. It's actually the ability to have a leader that helps you learn and develop yourself. And that's where great leadership really sits. And
Wow.
as you were saying at the beginning of this part, yeah, it all links in really well.
That's incredible. That having a leader who really supports you and invests in you. I once again, I feel like these things all combine in my mind because otherwise I'd love to remember exactly where I saw this. But it was a similar survey, and it was I think money or salary was number 5 on the list, and I just remember looking at that and going, oh, that is. Um, but that didn't articulate what you just said, which is a step further, which is what's really starting to matter is the support and investment from a leader that they're working with.
Absolutely. And if you're looking at the big global companies now, they're investing heavily, not just in learning and development for their people, but in really serious leadership training for their leaders, particularly focusing on empathy and the ability to relate with their people. They're not investing on the pure capability side. They're not looking at training people in math or anything else. It's really the emotional connection ability to their people to be able to guide people to success through supporting them. So things have changed a lot in the last 15 years.
Yeah, and I really feel for I really feel for leaders where they feel like they've been operating on narrow margins, maybe in the bottom line, but also across their world. And then over the past decade, I think some leaders are just things are getting to a point where they're going, I have to change something because I can't keep my best people, or I can't
Mhm.
differentiate from the competition. The thing that was working is now officially not working, and I have to do something. What what advice would you give, particularly if there's a leader out there who's thinking, "Oh, Lisa, that's so true. I'm not supporting my people as well as I need to, but I'm just so overwhelmed myself with everything on my own to-do list. How do I do that better? What advice would you give to someone who really wanted to improve in that, but's feeling strapped for time, maybe for
Yeah,
time and money?
it's a big space, and quite often the question I get is not only are they strapped for time, but you're right, they're functioning on low margin. So they see things like training and development as a scary cost that they can't deal with right now. And that holds them back even further. And there's an old saying that, and I've just forgotten who said it, but I'm sure we could easily Google it and find out. With training particularly, what if we don't train them and they stay? And you've got to think about that for a second. If we don't train them and they stay with your business, because the argument always is, what if we train them and they leave and we've invested so much money? But what if we don't and they stay? If you don't train them and they stay with you, is your business getting any benefit? Are the people getting any benefit? And the answer is no, and quite often they're driving you backwards. And that's where these managers are often trapped, because they're in a rock and a hard place. They've got the poor margins, they don't have time themselves. So one of the best things I can say that needs to be done at this point is look internal. You have more resources than you realize that don't cost you anything. So I always start with simple things. Now we can look at cross-functional working teams. We can pull people out during the workday to work together to work on initiatives. And that initiative can be around L&D. It could be around continuous improvement. It could be a CSR project. But the thing here is starting the collaboration so that you can start to build working teams that can help you drive forward to successful outcomes. And you might want to start on something simple like a charity drive, something that everyone can get involved in. But as soon as you start breaking down those barriers, you start to develop more of a culture in your business that supports each other. And that's where that overwhelmed manager on the low margins can start to see people working together and start to pick projects that will strengthen the core. And you can slowly move forward from there. But cross-functional working teams, internal mentoring are two of the strongest tools I've seen to really start to turn around a business. And they don't cost you.
Yeah, along the same lines, what I've seen, which I've really loved, is organizations where they've wanted to create a culture of peer-to-peer coaching and approaching it from exactly like you said, around thinking how often do we need a sounding board, how often, and also at the same time realizing that if we can invest in internal mentoring, if we can invest in a culture where we coach each other, and think less about job title and who I'm reporting to, and more about how can we help each other get the best out of each other and as a team, then what you also get is empathy, because the more you learn to coach and mentor and cross-functional teams, I love that, because when you're in those teams, and particularly if you're breaking down some silos and bringing some really great people who think differently into a team that because of job titles and because of projects, they're normally, it's more about being consistent, but you bring in a real innovative thinker from another group, you're sort of just pushing into things like empathy, and just by creating those spaces, that's going to help increase the water level a little bit when it comes to empathy, and when it comes to people asking more questions of each other and not just staying silent.
Absolutely. And it's a really interesting one because I love how it breaks down barriers and improves the empathy, creates relationships that weren't there previously. But there was a really interesting global study done, I think it's about a year and a half ago now, by Giant International. And they found that the average team, right? We've got lots of teams in big businesses, but the average team only functions at about 57% of its capability, which is kind of scary because we're paying people at 100%. So there's a pretty big gap there and lots of room for improvement. But the reason for that is because the average team gets used to listening to the one voice. That one person who drives them forward. So everyone else's capabilities naturally drop away as they get used to the one voice. And so if you're putting cross-functional working teams into your business, you're immediately capitalizing on this big gap because you've got new voices coming into the equation, new ideas, new thoughts, new ways of doing things. So I think it's one of those really key things that a lot of businesses, particularly those who are busy and cash-strapped, don't realize how much benefit they can really get from starting them.
Yeah, and I love that you're giving some advice around some free things to start with. Try doing this when there's not a big cost involved. Just start a project like this, build a cross functional team, do some training, use some people internally who are passionate. I have
Absolutely.
a client that I work with who has a team member who is really passionate about coaching. Now, there's nothing in their role around coaching, but they've given them sort of the project around creating a culture of coaching because they're so passionate about it, and now it is part of their role. And I think that's a great first step. What are your resources you have? What resources do you already have internally? I know you're really passionate about engaging people, and I hear from a lot of leaders a disappointment and discouragement around how on earth do you really truly engage your people. What advice would you give to leaders coming into 2022 around increasing engagement?
Yeah, look, for me, it's really about go to the floor and ask the question. We can do all of these big tools, which are great. There's 360-degree feedback surveys, there's culture surveys, and they're all fantastic for helping you pinpoint where your problems are and where your opportunities are. But when you get that, you still got to go back to the floor and talk to your people. And this is what I say to most leaders, you've got this gap because you're busy. And if you've got 2 or 3,000 staff, you can't talk to all of them. But you've got to find a way for their voices to be heard. And the frontline staff typically are more than 60% of most businesses, yet most leaders wouldn't know who they are. So look at closing that gap first. If you're looking to develop that culture, engage your people, make sure that the people on the front lines know their voices are heard. Now, it can be through the old-fashioned Dropbox surveys, it could be through an intranet system, it could be through a quarterly meeting. There's all different options that you can do, none of which are overly expensive. But you can start to engage your front line. And when you start to do that, you'll start to see change because you'll be getting the true issues, the true answers, the true ideas. And that can make all the difference.
Yeah, that's great advice. I'm wondering, and I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here. I'm just wondering if you have any
Yep.
stories. Maybe if you change the names or change the locations, or if that it might be the sort of story where it's really good and they'd be happy for you to share. But any stories that come to mind of clients of yours that you've worked with where they've had some great success around engagement. They've really changed their culture to support their people, and how that's had wider effects in the company, how it's improved bottom line, how it's improved company culture, how they got there, and any stories that come to mind, Lisa?
Yeah, sure. So I guess going back to my time in Australia, I've worked with quite a few big businesses just from that pure perspective. But one of the ones that stands out probably a little bit more than most was a pharmacy chain, and quite a large one. The turnover was in the hundreds of millions of dollars, just to give you a bit of a picture of size. There were several thousand staff spread out across different states in Australia. And the company had done really well. They'd started up 40 years previous, they'd kept scaling, kept growing, buying new sites, all of that kind of stuff. The good stuff that you want to hear about a company being successful. But despite continued investment, they'd sort of hit this peak where they just couldn't get their profits any further. And so this was one where I went in and I investigated the business and went through what was happening. And it was a bit of a dual effect, but mostly it came back to engaging their people. As they'd scaled quickly, their structure had kind of missed the point. So I had to fix the structure and the alignment internally to make that work. But more importantly, the frontline staff who used to feel part of the business when the business was smaller, and these people had stayed around. It's a type of industry, retail pharmacy, a lot of your store managers, your more senior staff, they're there for many years. The juniors come and go every few years, but there's a fairly strong senior staff group. And they just lost contact with the main vision of the business, the drive, the owners, everyone that they'd known when they'd first started. So it was a matter of going back to that and actually opening those communication channels again. And what we found when we did that was that it wasn't that the staff hated the business or that the market was different or anything else that was causing this cap on earnings. It was that the staff just hadn't been trained and upskilled in 10 years. The assumption was they'd been there for so long they knew their job. But the marketplace had changed a bit, and some of the margins had shrunk. So they had to reassess how they laid out a pharmacy, which retail stock they put where, how they did their rosters. They had to change that a bit as well. And then some basic understanding around co-op and investment from external providers into the business and how that was used. And once all those markers were hit, the profits went up within 6 months. And that was just because the people that they knew would always be there and who supported them and loved them had just been disconnected from the top of the business. So that's where that engaging your people becomes so crucial and can turn a business around. And in fact, the main owner of that business said to me, he goes, Lisa, why didn't I listen to you 6 months ago when you first highlighted this with me? We could have made this revenue back 6 months ago. So, well, we got there in the end, though.
That's right. That's a wonderful story. Thank you for sharing. I know you've given a couple of examples, but I can just imagine there'd be leaders listening really hungry to know what they can do. And anecdotally, I love the fact that how many times do we hear stories of great leaders, and there's that one of the attributes that comes out again and again is that connection to the frontline workers particularly in larger companies. So what can say there are leaders, whether maybe they're a school leader with 100 staff, or maybe they're leading an organization with 5,000 staff. What can they do? What are some things? I know you've mentioned a couple already, but what are some practical things they can do to reconnect with their people on the front line?
Yeah, look, there's apart from the pure black and white tool type of things that we've mentioned, I think look a little bit personally on this one as well, and look internally and practice being an authentic leader, because people want to see your authenticity to be able to connect with you. And if you look at people who are considered authentic leaders, they are brilliant storytellers. And the reason I bring this up is because all of the leaders that are listening, you've got your stories, you've good and bad, personal and business,
Yeah.
that you've done, you understand, you know why and how, and they meant something. They'll also mean something to a lot of other people. So as you as a leader are trying to connect with your vast teams that could be really dispersed, having some stories up your sleeve that are personal from your background that can relate to your people. If you're dealing with a sales team and they've had a hard time, I'm sure you've done that before in the past, but think about a story around that. Because the good thing about a good story is that it helps people emotionally connect to you. They can understand why you did certain things. They can say, hey, that's what I would have liked to have done. And as they do that, the empathy rises. And you as a leader, they're more willing to listen to. They see your integrity. They have belief in you because the story you told resonates with them personally. So one of the best things you can do, and it's not a project or anything else, is personally sit down and work on your own authenticity and those key stories that you can share with people to allow them to connect with you.
That's amazing. I didn't even think of linking those two things together, but I'm just cheering on that idea because I agree so much the power of story. I remember having the chance to have a meal with someone who is speaks in front of about 1 million people every year. And it just so happened that I ended up being able to be at a table with this person, and I just the part of me that's like always wants to find maximize any opportunity just couldn't handle the fact that like there was nothing attached to it. We just ended up at the same table, and I turned and I said to them, because they're a speaker, that's what they do every day in, day out, and I said, what? I just can't help. Now I'm sitting here next to you and I'm loving getting to know you and just chatting, but I have to ask, what is the key? Like, how do you speak to 1 million people? Like, what's one key around speaking publicly? And I remember he said to me, he said stories, and he said, when you tell a story, people can step into your shoes and actually experience. If you want to experience, if you want to get that emotional connection, the best way is to tell a story because people can step into your shoes. And I just thought that was gold. And I love how you've connected it though to the everyday. And I think every leader, one skill that is worth 1,000-fold in terms of ROI is telling stories. And there's a great book, I think it's called The Hero's Journey, or if people Google it, around how to structure stories. And it's really fascinating. If people have heard this and gone, I really need to do this, and you want to get a little bit nerdy about it, because I love storytelling from like a script. And there's George Lucas actually wrote Star Wars. One of the things that actually inspired him to write Star Wars and the way he wrote it was based on, I think it's called The Hero with a Thousand Faces or The Hero's Journey, and it's actually a way older book that articulates this is how stories have been told in different locations, different cultures forever, and actually sort of explains that there's this way of writing a story, like where the story starts, and it's you're not going to use it, so you're not going to have a movie level script for your story. But I found it really helpful as an example, realizing that a great story often has a moment of struggle and hitting the wall, and then there's an epiphany or a guide, and so I now, and once again, this some people might be zoning out at this is a bit too much. But if this is something people want to really press into, then you can think back to your own stories and think like exactly what you said. You're dealing with a sales team that's struggling with maybe they've got a deadline a couple of weeks away. What's the time in your life where you've really struggled and you ended up hitting a deadline or not? And if you tell a story and you tell the story with emotion around how you felt at the different moments, talk about the struggle, because that's where people really lean in, not just say, and I've always, really believed and done well to hit deadlines. It's like that doesn't move anyone. You got to actually be vulnerable and share authentically.
Most definitely.
Well, I would love to keep chatting about engagement and support, but let's jump into Leadership Express, and maybe at some point, Lisa, I'd love to invite you back for another episode, and we can drill down on at that point a topic that's really of interest to you, or where listeners have really said, I'd love to hear more about that. But just for the sake of time, so that invitation is there. I'd love to have you back another time.
Oh, thank you so much. I'd enjoy that.
Yeah, it's been great. Let's jump into Leadership Express. So I'm just going to ask you a bunch of questions and go as quickly as I can, and just give us the first sort of answer that comes to mind. You ready?
Okay, go for it.
Okay. What is a book that you've gifted a lot to other people?
There's been two, and one's old and one's new, ironically enough. I'm not trying to rhyme things there, but that's how it happened.
I like it.
One, the good old, I know how it goes sometimes, the good old fashioned Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yes.
I think if you read it properly, it makes you think. It really makes you think about what you're doing. And because value based leadership is so important now, I think it's becoming back in fashion again. The
Absolutely.
other one is the opposite end of the spectrum, which is the new one, which is by Andrew Bryant, who's a global speaker who specializes in self leadership.
Hmm.
So, for those people out there who are moving into their first leadership role or who are questioning themselves, he has some great paradigms to really help you dig deep inside and work out what you do need to change or where you're really good and how you can structure it differently. And that's literally self leadership. It's a very easy book to find online.
Brilliant. Self-Leadership by Andrew Bryant and How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Love it. Any great
Yep.
podcasts that you're currently listening to, or other sources that you're reading, watching, or listening to?
I've started getting into Adam Grant lately from the US. He's
Yep.
got some really interesting insights just into what makes you tick as a person and what you should be questioning yourself on. That one's been really interesting lately.
Love it. What's a time management productivity tip or a tool or resource that you're using?
I think the time management productivity, know what your goals really are first, because a lot of people make a mess with this. You can write a list of things to do, but if you don't know where you're going and they're unimportant things that are on your list rather than important things, you're in trouble. And really just drill down what is important to get through your day and focus on that first.
Yeah, that's amazing. I've been really leaning into that myself because I'm great at talking about it, but doing it and actually writing things out, I've had mixed success, and I've really been challenging myself. And I've been loving the 4 disciplines of execution, the idea of a WIG, a wildly important goal, and
Mhm.
and I also love Patrick Lencioni's work, which is more based for teams, but he has this whole section in The Advantage around asking what's most important right now. If I could only achieve one thing, or we could only achieve one thing in the next 6 months to be successful, what would it be? And I've been asking myself that personally. And that's just, those questions are great filters before you start getting into the minutiae of what you actually need to do. So I think goal setting is actually doing it and writing out goals, whatever the framework is a great recommendation. Okay, a tip around work-life balance.
I think this is a very personal thing. Work-life balance, I think recognize what you need as a person first. And look, everyone's different. I think the big tip is make sure you break your workday up so you have some mental health space in there. And that can look different for everyone. Some people might want to exercise at lunchtime. Some people might want to exercise before work. Some might like to read a book. Some might like to search some podcasts and get some inspiration. Whatever that happens to be for you personally, break up your workday with it so that you can rest and recharge that little bit, and you'll be so much better off for it.
That's amazing. You give great advice. I can see why you're a consultant now, Lisa. This is really good.
Thank you.
I'm honestly always surprised. I shouldn't be because I love chatting to the guests I have on, and I'm always reaching out to people because I know they're amazing. But I'm still always surprised just at the great pieces of advice. So I'm just really enjoying it. I'm being a listener myself right now and just enjoying what you're saying. Speaking of advice, what's one great piece of advice you've received at some point in your life? A life leadership.
And it's probably more recent, but it's something I was probably doing unconsciously and didn't verbalize it, was be hard on the problem, not on the people. And I think that's really key in today's workforce because there's going to be a lot of problems, a lot of things are going to go wrong, but we can't tear apart the people. We've got to make sure they have the support and the tools to actually deal with it first, and then we've got to help them get through it. So that's one that I think I live by fairly strongly.
Yeah, that's actually got layers of genius to it because we can all think of leaders where they've been hard on us and on the problem, and that's unpleasant. If you don't feel like the leader has your back and is really investing in you, they've lost you, right? Trust. But we can also think of leaders that were easy on us but weren't actually hard on the problem either. They were actually just a bit too disconnected and that's also unpleasant because you want someone who's got your back, but also will push you. I think great people anyway. If you want to keep great people, you need to be a leader that is hard on the problem and goes there, holds people accountable, and but is really easy and gentle on the person and actually has their best interests. So that's gold.
Thank you.
Okay, a movie or TV show that really impacted you.
Oh, well, now that's a hard one for me to answer because I'm a sci-fi fan from years ago. So most of mine are totally different from anything we're speaking about today.
Oh, that's fine. Hit
But
us
I
with
guess
some sci-fi. What's a sci-fi? I'd love to hear a sci-fi. I read fantasy sci-fi books, and that's one of my ways of, like you said before, about finding that space for me. I can actually stop thinking about clarity in my business when I do that because a lot of the other times I'm always thinking about things in the back of my mind. So yeah, feel free. I'd love to hear a sci-fi recommendation if you're comfortable.
Yeah, I think it goes back more to books because a lot of these haven't been made into movies yet. But people like Simon Green have written some amazing deep space ones that really challenge concepts.
Yeah.
But I think what resonates with me is that the characters, while sometimes flawed and not the best, have an underlying integrity and set of morals that they live by. I think that's what influences me quite a lot with those types of genres.
Yeah. Okay. Simon Green. Love it. A quote that you're particularly fond of.
Now, that's a hard question. I'm trying to think of one that I'm particularly fond of.
Yeah, when I ask that question, all quotes, I think there's something that happens for some reason. I don't know the physics of it, but all quotes disappear out of a person's mind when you ask them for one of their favorites. That's just how it works.
Yeah, it's one of those difficult questions. I think for me, it's just always move forward. If you fall over, pick yourself up, get up, keep moving forward. Even if it's only half a step, move forward.
Brilliant. If you could only give one piece of leadership advice to a young leader, what would you say?
Find yourself a good mentor.
See, that's good too. This is unfair having this many great answers, Lisa. What's the?
Thank you.
No, it's honestly really good. I think people are going to love it. What's the best thing you're doing at the moment in your own business, but also maybe with other leaders that leaders out there should know about?
Oh, look, I think that's an easy one. Networking. I think, we're going through so much change right now, everything's happening, that if you have a good network or you're part of even a professional business network, like one of the ones I'm involved in Singapore, EGN, Executive Global Network, it opens your eyes to so many different ways of doing things. And we make sure we meet up at least once a month, sometimes more, but we have a lot of WhatsApp chats in between. And I tell you what, it gives so much, connection, support, information. It's amazing. So make sure you have a network of some sort that works for you, and look how you're going to expand it as well. Because the more you expand it, the more sources of truth that you're exposed to.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So for those who are really loving your advice and like I said, maybe thinking, oh, Lisa might be the person I need to follow or connect with, or even actually work with, because they're just hearing some of the things you're really passionate about, going, you might be the person to help them. Where can they find you online?
Yep, super easy. With my name, Lisa Askwith, you can find me on LinkedIn pretty easily because it's an unusual name. Or the business name is Apex, BRS. BRS stands for Business and Restructure Specialists. And so there's obviously LinkedIn or the website there. You can also, if people are keen to listen to more ideas and thoughts, I have a lot of podcasts available. So you can literally just ask for my name on your favorite podcast provider, and you'll get a list of them that are run through IBGR Radio. And they're all business focused, all engaging your people for success and key tips and tricks.
That's perfect. That'll be great for people to find out more. And just a reminder for those listening as well, we also have at Clarity, we have a couple more podcasts, because I know it sounds funny, but people who love podcasts are probably here listening to podcasts. So make sure you go and check out Lisa's podcast and just look up Lisa Askwith in the wherever you listen to your podcast. We also have the leadership question of the day, where I just put a stone in your shoe and ask you a challenging question. That's available, and the John O'White Leadership Podcast, which is more just me giving thoughts on 7 tips around well-being or different things like that. But I just want to finish today by saying a massive thank you to Lisa. I wasn't just being silly saying how much I've enjoyed it. I honestly have just found a lot of the things you've said are getting the wheels turning in my head, and I think it's really going to challenge and help listeners out there. So thank you so much for coming on, Lisa. It's been a real joy.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. Thanks for asking me, Jono. And as I said at the beginning, anything I can offer out there that's going to help someone, I'm more than happy to do it.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Leadership Conversations podcast as much as I did. If you're joining us for the first time, don't forget to check out consultclarity.org. That's our website, consultclarity.org. We have so many free resources on there, including our 7 Questions on Leadership series. We've had more than 1,500 leaders from all over the world in all different roles, in different industries, answer these 7 questions on leadership, and leaders give these in-depth answers around how they spend their time, a book that's been significant for them. It's just a gold mine. It's completely free to access, so go to consultclarity.org and look for that. We'd also love to interview you about your leadership. I believe your experience, your life, your context means that you have advice on leadership that other leaders can learn from. Yes, you. If you're going, not me, well, no, I really believe you would have something to add. So if you're looking for a way to give back, it's completely free to get involved. And we would love to interview you through the 7 Questions on Leadership. You just go to consultclarity.org/7-questions-interest, or Google consultclarity.org 7 questions interest and fill out the form and get involved. We have a free resource on our website called the Leadership Survival Guide. It's a 57-page ebook, 10 world-class leaders giving their thoughts on leadership, and that's completely free. It's available on our homepage, consultclarity.org, right at the top, so make sure you go and get that and download it today. And we have a free daily email that you can subscribe to. We send this out to over 15,000 leaders from around the world. And it contains the highlights of content from our podcasts, our blogs, our books we're reading. It's got the best content, and it gives you exclusive, limited, early access to our masterclasses, workshops, new products, special offers. It's all for our subscribers. You can go to consultclarity.org/subscribe and join 15,000 other leaders. And my gift to you is to work really hard, particularly through the Leadership Conversations podcast. I have been blown away by the quality of the leaders, and I'm learning as much as anyone in doing these interviews. So I'm having a great time. And my gift to you is to keep lining up the best leaders I can to invest in your leadership. Your gift to me, if you're finding this helpful, there is something that you could do that would help us out massively. And that is to write a review and to leave a rating for our podcast or wherever you're watching or listening to this. I can't tell you how much that helps us out. Also, subscribe or follow. It really does make a difference in helping us to help more leaders become everything they're meant to be. Another thing that means a lot to me personally is when I see our community share our content. So if you do share this or any other piece of content on social media, then thank you, and please do that. And look for me, Jono White, or Clarity, and tag us in your post. Our team is always looking for posts to engage with from our community, and there's also a chance that we'll share your content to go beyond and share it with our followers. Last of all, you can check out my book. It's called Step Up or Step Out: How to Deal with Difficult People Even If You Hate Conflict. I wrote this book because 50% of the coaching sessions I have with leaders, this topic comes up again and again and again. And it's this idea of, how do I have this difficult conversation? How do I lead this person better when I'm finding them difficult? Or in some cases, you look and you say, I think I might be leading a difficult person. They're just quite difficult to lead, or I'm finding them quite difficult to lead. So there's a 3-step process that I unpack in Step Up or Step Out. And the amazing thing, and I've literally done this myself, and I've heard it anecdotally from other leaders as I've coached them, is that if you follow this process, you will see that person step up and change their behavior or make a decision, which is to step out some of the time. 95% of the time, people will step up or step out in just 4 weeks. And I stand by that. It's you have to read the book to understand, but I really do believe in it, and I've experienced it firsthand. It works. So you can go to Amazon, look up Step Up or Step Out Jono White, or store.consultclarity.org/book. Well, thank you so much for listening. We're going to be back with a new episode next time of the Leadership Conversations podcast. And I hope today has helped you to take another step towards becoming the leader you're meant to be. See you next time.